It began not with a bang, but with a song. We called it the Lullaby, a name coined by some lonely deep space comms tech on Ganymede who thought the faint, melodic static sounded like the ghost of a nursery rhyme drifting between the stars. For the better part of a decade, it was just that a curiosity, a piece of cosmic background noise that filled the dead air on long-haul freighter runs. Astronomers at the Sol Unified Observatory on Luna mapped its source to the cold, dark edge of the system, somewhere out past the Kuiper Belt, and labeled it a magnetar with a peculiar rotational hum. They wrote papers, held conferences, and then, like all mysteries that refuse to offer easy answers, it was filed away. We had more immediate concerns. Mars was rattling its sabers over water rights in the belt. The Outer Rim syndicates were in a quiet but bloody war over Helium-3 claims, and Earth, old, tired Earth, was content to play the fractured system states against one another as long as the resources kept flowing homeward. Humanity had carried its old grievances into space, and the void was not big enough to contain them. We were a species teetering on the brink of self-annihilation, too busy staring at our own feet to notice the abyss had begun to stare back. My name is Alistair Finch, and I was a junker. That's the polite term. The corporations called us scavengers. The system state patrols called us pirates. The truth was somewhere in the messy middle. My crew and I flew a rust bucket salvage hauler called the Stray Dog, a decommissioned Series Corp freighter that bled atmosphere and screamed in protest every time we pushed the fusion drive past 80%. Our life was a cycle of chasing rumors of derelict ships, stripping them for parts, and selling the scrap to whichever grimy port authority wouldn't ask too many questions. My crew was my only family, Lena, a Martian-born engineer who could coax life out of dead machinery with a string of curses and a well-aimed wrench. Her younger brother, Sam, a kid with eyes too old for his face who could pilot the dog through a debris field blindfolded, and Jax, a hulking Earther ex-Marine who had traded his power armor for a quiet life of hydroponics and intimidation. We were ghosts, nobodies, living in the cracks of a civilization that had grand designs but no room for the people who got left behind. We liked it that way. Ghosts don't get drafted, they don't pay taxes, and they rarely get noticed. But that all changed the day the lullaby stopped being a song and became a voice. We were working a claim near the orbit of Uranus, a graveyard of ships from the old Belt Wars. It was quiet work, the kind we liked. Just the hiss of our life support, the groan of stressed metal as our magnetic grapples latched onto a shattered frigate, and the faint, ever-present hum of the lullaby on the comms. Sam was the first to notice something was wrong. "Hey, Al," he'd said, his voice a little shaky over the ship's internal link. "You hear that the song, it's changing." I listened. The simple repeating melody was still there, but underneath it, a new layer had emerged. It was a soft, rhythmic clicking, like a metronome counting down to something. Then came the whispers. They weren't words, not in any language I knew, but they slid into my mind all the same, slick and cold. They felt like the memory of drowning, the dizzying calm of giving up. I saw Lena across the bridge, her wrench frozen in her hand, her eyes wide and unfocused. Jax had dropped a tray of nutrient paste, his massive frame rigid, a single bead of sweat tracing a line down his temple. The whispers were in all of us. They promised stillness. They promised an end to the struggle, to the constant fight for air, for fuel, for one more day. They promised peace, and that was the most terrifying thing I had ever felt. The feeling passed as quickly as it came, leaving a residue of cold dread. Before any of us could speak, a priority distress call screamed across all channels, overriding everything. It was from Karen Relay, the primary communications hub for the deep-range mining outposts on Pluto and its moons. The voice was frantic, laced with static and pure, undiluted panic. Mayday. Mayday. This is Supervisor Thorne at Charon Relay. We have a visual on Pluto Outpost. God, it's not there. It's just gone. 1 minute it was there, and then the light just bent. The man was hyperventilating, his words tumbling over one another. The lullaby. It's so loud. It's not a sound. Oh God, it's inside the walls. The transmission cut to a high-gain telescope feed, shaky and distorted. It showed the dark curve of Pluto against the star field, but where the brightly lit cluster of the mining outpost should have been, there was nothing. No explosion, no debris field, no wreckage. Just a shimmering distortion in space, like heat haze off a desert road. As we watched, the distortion pulsed, and a nearby moonlet, a tiny rock no bigger than our ship, seemed to unexist. It didn't explode. It just folded in on itself, its light twisting into a single point before vanishing completely. Thorne's voice came back, no longer screaming, but crooning. He was humming the lullaby, his voice calm and serene as the feed cut out, replaced by the empty hiss of space. We were paralyzed. 10,000 people on that outpost, gone, wiped from reality without a fight, without a sound. The system states immediately lit up with accusations. Mars blamed Earth's Black Ops division. Earth claimed it was a new terror weapon from the Outer Rim syndicates. Everyone was shouting, pointing fingers, mobilizing their pathetic little fleets. They didn't understand. This wasn't war. This was something else. War is loud and messy. This was silent and clean. War leaves ruins. This left nothing. Lena, her face pale, brought up the spectral analysis from the moment the outpost vanished. Alistair, and look at this, she whispered, her finger tracing a line on the screen. There's a massive energy spike, off the charts. But it's not thermal, not kinetic, not radiation. It's gravitational and something else. Something I've never seen. It's like the universe just decided the Planck constant was negotiable in that specific area. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a weapon. You don't aim a weapon that rewrites physics. We should have run. We should have pointed the stray dog toward the inner system, sold our scrap, and disappeared into the slums of 100 different asteroid colonies. But we couldn't. We were the only ones who had seen it happen. The only ones with the raw data from the event. And somewhere, deep in my gut, I knew running wouldn't work. You can't run from something that can unmake space. That night, I had a nightmare. I was floating in the void, and the stars began to sing the lullaby. One by one, they went out, folding into nothingness just like the outpost. Their light swallowed by a silence that was more than just the absence of sound. A presence was there with me in the dark, vast and ancient and utterly indifferent. It wasn't hostile. A boot isn't hostile to an ant. It just is. I woke up gasping, the phantom melody echoing in my skull. I made a decision. Sam, I said, my voice hoarse. Plot a course for Station Erebos. Top speed. and keep us out of the main shipping lanes. From now on, we're a ghost. Station Erebos was a myth, a boogeyman the corporations used to scare freelance researchers. A black site science station in a tight orbit around a brown dwarf, a place where the unified Earth government supposedly sent its most brilliant and most unstable minds to poke at the edges of reality. If anyone could understand Lena's data, it was them. Getting there was a new kind of hell. The lullaby was stronger now, a constant presence at the edge of hearing. The whispers came more frequently, insidiously. They didn't just promise peace anymore. They used our own memories against us. I saw the faces of men I'd killed back in my corporate enforcement days, their voices telling me to lay down my burden. Lena would stare at the engine schematics for hours, convinced she'd missed a fatal flaw that was about to kill us all. Sam started having waking dreams of flying the dog into the heart of a sun, describing the beautiful silence he felt there. Only Jack seemed unaffected, a rock of calm in our sea of fraying sanity. He'd simply turn up the music in his hydroponics bay, old earth punk rock, and mutter, "Can't hear the void if the tunes are loud enough." He was our anchor. Without him, we would have torn ourselves apart. As we neared the Jupiter system, we almost ran headlong into a Martian patrol fleet. 5 sleek, crimson destroyers, moving fast, their weapons hot. They were on a war footing, looking for an Earth fleet to blame for Pluto. They pinged us, demanding identification. Before I could even begin to spin a lie, the lullaby surged. It wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a roar in our minds, a pressure that made our teeth ache and our eyeballs feel like they were going to pop. On our view screen, space twisted. A patch of void behind the Martian fleet began to ripple, the stars behind it smearing like wet paint. One of the destroyers, the Vengeance of Ares, turned to investigate the anomaly. It fired a probe. The probe traveled about 1,000 kilometers and then simply ceased to be. The distortion, the shimmering patch of wrongness, expanded. It didn't move toward the ship. It just grew. A patch of cosmic mold consuming reality. The captain of the Martian vessel was shouting on the open comm, demanding answers, his voice tight with confusion and fear. We saw it happen on our screens, a perfect, high-resolution nightmare. The Vengeance of Ares began to dissolve, not explode. It came apart in geometric shapes, its hull peeling away in silent, elegant fractals of light and metal. The crew, their life signs blinking on our monitors, didn't even have time to scream. One by one, their bio signs went from green to red to nothing. The ship was erased from existence in less than 10 seconds. The other 4 destroyers broke formation and ran, firing their engines at maximum, fleeing in blind terror. The wrongness in space contracted, vanishing as if it had never been there. And in our heads, the roar of the lullaby subsided back to a whisper, but this time it felt different. It felt satisfied. It wasn't a random phenomenon. It was a predator, and it had just shown us its teeth. Sam was vomiting into a waste receptacle, his body racked with tremors. Lena was curled into a ball under her console, weeping silently. Even Jax was pale, his knuckles white where he gripped the edge of a console. "It's hunting," he breathed, his voice rough. "That thing is hunting." He was right. And I knew with a chilling certainty that it wasn't hunting the Martians. They were just in the way. It was hunting us. We had seen it. We had the data. We understood. and in the cold, silent calculus of this new entity. Understanding was a threat. We weren't just ghosts anymore. We were witnesses. And the thing that sang the lullaby did not like to be seen. I looked at the navigation console, at the blinking icon for Station Erebos. Still millions of kilometers away. It wasn't just a destination anymore. It was our only hope for an answer. Our only prayer for a weapon against a song that could unmake the stars. The stray dog groaned as we pushed the drive into the red, fleeing into the darkness. But there was no escaping the music. It was inside us now, a permanent resident in our minds, waiting patiently for its moment to sing us all into silence. The silence that followed the destruction of the vengeance of Ares was worse than any sound. It was a weighted, listening silence, and we were the ones being listened to. The predator had tasted blood, and now it knew our scent. We were no longer just running toward something. We were running from a ghost that could walk through walls and unmake the world with a whisper. I had to force my hands to stop shaking as I took the helm from Sam, whose knuckles were bone white and whose eyes were fixed on the spot in the void where a warship had just been disassembled by a nightmare. Lena, damage report. I snapped, my voice sounding brittle and thin in the oppressive quiet. Jax, get Sam to the medbay. Give him a sedative, a strong one. Lena's fingers flew across her console, her face a mask of frantic concentration. No external damage. Alistair, no radiation, no debris impact. It's like it never happened, except the ship's chronometer is off. We've lost 3.7 seconds. It didn't sound like much, but a ship's clock is calibrated to the atomic level. To lose almost 4 seconds was like saying the universe had hiccuped. We hadn't just witnessed an event. We had been inside its wake, and time itself had frayed at the edges. Jax gently pulled a catatonic Sam from the pilot's chair. The kid didn't resist. He moved like a sleepwalker, his eyes still seeing fractals in the darkness. We're being hunted, I said, stating the terrifyingly obvious. Lena didn't look up from her screen. It's worse than that. It's a call and response. Look. She projected a waveform onto the main view screen. 2 distinct signals. This first spike is our fusion drive flaring when we changed course to avoid the Martians. This second, much larger one, is the energy signature of the event. It didn't just happen to be there. Our energy output acted like a dinner bell. It heard us. And it came. We were a firefly in a forest full of things that eat light. Our only option was to get quieter, darker. We cut the main drive and switched to maneuvering thrusters, running on a trickle of power that left the ship cold and dim. We were a ghost ship now, haunted from the inside out. The lullaby was a constant companion, a low thrum of dread that we could feel in our bones. The whispers intensified, growing more personal, more cruel. They found the cracks in our minds and pried them open for Sam. It was the lure of the void. He'd stand at the viewport for hours, his breath fogging the reinforced glass. It's not empty. Al, he'd murmur when I tried to pull him away. There are currents in it, lanes of pure silence. The ship wants to fly them. It would be so easy. No more running. I had to lock him out of the cockpit. He was a danger to us, not out of malice, but because the song had promised his pilot's soul a perfect, final flight. Lena fought it with logic. She buried herself in the data, working without sleep, her face illuminated by the cold blue glow of her console. She was trying to build a cage of mathematics around the monster, to define it, and therefore control it. But the monster was protean, The frequency keeps shifting, she'd mutter, rubbing her temples raw. It's not just broadcasting, it's listening. It adapts to my analysis. It's showing me things in the data, equations that shouldn't work, geometries that fold in on themselves. It feels like it's trying to teach me a new kind of physics, and I think if I ever fully understand it, my brain will just dissolve. Jax was my biggest worry. His quiet strength had been our bedrock, but even rocks can be worn down by a constant, insidious tide. The Whispers didn't use his violent past against him. They used his dream of a peaceful future. He started talking to his plants, not in the casual way he always had, but in long, intense conversations. One day, I found him standing motionless in the hydroponics bay, a single tear rolling down his cheek. "It showed me a garden," he said, his voice thick with a longing so profound it ached. "Not this tin can full of nutrient paste and UV lights. A real one. On Earth. I could feel the sun. Al. I could smell the dirt after a rain. It told me all I had to do was stop fighting. Just be still." The predator wasn't just killing us. It was seducing us into oblivion. It offered each of us the one thing we secretly craved most, an end to our struggle. And for me, it used my own command. It replayed every bad decision I'd ever made, every crew member I'd lost on other ships, in other lifetimes. It whispered that I was leading this crew, my family, to the same end. It told me the kindest thing I could do was fly the stray dog into the nearest gravity well and grant them all the peace they deserved. Some nights, I almost listened. Our journey to Erebos became a desperate crawl through the back alleys of the solar system. We hid in the shadow of asteroids, coasted through the upper atmospheres of gas giants to mask our heat signature, and powered down to near-death states for days at a time. But it always found us. We'd be coasting silent and dark, and then a tool would float off a workbench in zero-G, spinning in a way that defied inertia, or the water in our reclamation tanks would form perfect, crystalline structures for a few seconds before collapsing back into liquid. These were its calling cards, little miracles of impossible physics to let us know it was there, watching, waiting, playing with its food. The final straw came as we were navigating the Trojan asteroids of Saturn. We were in a dense cluster, a place where our little ship should have been invisible. But the lullaby surged, a deafening chorus in our minds. Outside, the rocks began to move, not randomly, but with a horrifying, coordinated grace. 100-ton mountains of ice and stone shifted, turning to form a corridor, a path that led directly to a shimmering patch of wrongness that had opened in the void ahead. It was a cage made of moons, and it was closing around us. The Whispers were gone, replaced by a single commanding chord that vibrated through the hull, telling us to be calm, to proceed, to accept our end. "It's cornered us," Jack stated, his voice flat. Sam was strapped into his bunk, sedated and thrashing against his restraints, living a nightmare we could only guess at. "I can't find a way out. They're blocking every exit." Lena was frantically typing at her console, her face drenched in sweat. "It's a resonance cascade," she shouted over the groaning of the ship's frame. "It's using the gravity of the asteroids to amplify its own signal, focusing it right on us. We're at the focal point of its voice." That's when it hit me. A voice, a song. How do you fight a song with noise? "Jax," I yelled. An idea born of pure desperation blooming in my mind. Your music, that old earth punk rock you're always blasting. What is it? He looked at me like I was insane. The Sex Pistols. Why? Because it's just noise, it's chaos. There's no melody, no harmony, just rage. I turned to Lena. Can you do it? Can you take that feeling, that chaos, and turn it into a broadcast, not a signal, a scream? Use the main comms array, the deep space sensors, even the fusion core. Modulate everything. Create a wave of pure, unpredictable static. Fight its order with our chaos. A wild light sparked in Lena's eyes. It was impossible, a move that could fry every system on the ship. But it was the only move we had left. I can try, she breathed. It's going to be loud. What followed was the closest thing to hell I have ever experienced. Lena rerouted power from every non-essential system, turning our entire ship into a giant, makeshift broadcast dish. She fed it a loop of Jax's music, overlaid with random number sequences, telemetry from our failing life support, and Sam's feverish, sedated mumblings, which she was picking up on the internal comms. The ship began to shake violently as the core struggled to handle the erratic power draws. Jax had to physically brace a shuddering power conduit with his bare hands, his muscles straining as blue energy arced around him. I was at the helm, trying to navigate the shifting maze of rocks while fighting a migraine so intense it felt like my skull was trying to turn itself inside out. The lullaby was fighting back, screaming in our minds, showing us visions of our own deaths, promising us an agony that would last an eternity if we did not submit. But for the first time, there was something else in our heads, the raw, chaotic, angry shriek of our own broadcast. It was a shield of pure noise. We couldn't hear the whispers anymore. The lullaby was still there, a crushing pressure, but its voice was muffled, drowned out by the static of our own defiance. The shimmering distortion wavered. The asteroids, no longer held in their perfect, horrifying formation, began to drift. We had given the predator a headache. We had jammed its senses. There, I yelled, spotting a gap. I slammed the thrusters forward, pushing the protesting dog through a closing hole in the rock field. We flew for hours, broadcasting our scream into the void, a beacon of pure chaos. The power flickered. Systems died and sputtered back to life. But we kept going. Finally, Lena collapsed over her console. I can't hold it. Alistair, the core is going to breach. Cut it, I ordered. The scream died. The ship fell silent. And for the first time in weeks, the lullaby was gone. The pressure in our heads vanished. The whispers were silent. We were alone. We had either escaped, or we were so deep in the predator's belly that it no longer needed to sing to us. I didn't know which was worse. We drifted, a wounded animal, for another day before our long-range sensors picked up the faint, rhythmic pulse of a station beacon. We had made it. We were at the coordinates for Erebos. But as we limped out of the shadow of a gas giant and laid eyes on our sanctuary, the cold dread returned with a vengeance. Station Erebos was there, a sprawling skeletal structure in the perpetual twilight of its parent brown dwarf. But it was completely dark, no running lights, no docking signals, no communications. It wasn't reflecting the dim, red light of the star. It was absorbing it. It hung in the void like a monument to a forgotten god, a silent, black tomb. We had survived the song in the void, only to arrive at a place where all the singers had, apparently, gone quiet for good. And as our docking clamps searched for a purchase on the cold, dead hull, I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't found a sanctuary at all. We had found the nest. Docking with a dead station is a special kind of unnerving. In a debris field, the dangers are obvious and kinetic. Here, the danger was a palpable absence, a void where life should have been. The stray dog's external sensors confirmed it. Erebos was a ghost. Minimal life support was active, a low-level hum of power that kept the internal temperature just above freezing. But there were no comms, no active systems, no signs of a crew. It was a ship in a bottle, perfectly preserved and utterly empty. The docking was eerily smooth. Our magnetic clamps found their purchase with a solid, definitive thud, and an umbilical tube extended from the station's airlock to meet ours without any command from us. It was automated, a final, polite gesture from a long-dead host. "It's an invitation," Jax muttered, his hand resting on the grip of a heavy-gauge plasma cutter. "Or a welcome mat for a trap." Lena, her face drawn and tired, bypassed the station's security protocols with an ease that told me they weren't just off, they'd been erased. Airlock is cycling. Atmosphere is stale but breathable, mostly nitrogen and argon. CO2 levels are high, consistent with a full crew expiring weeks ago. She paused, her eyes dark. "There's something else. A low-level energy field throughout the station. I can't classify it. It's like background radiation, but for a different kind of physics." We left Sam sedated and secured in the dog's medbay. He was too vulnerable, a raw nerve in the face of this psychic storm. The three of us crossed the umbilical, stepping into the cold, silent twilight of Station Erebos. Emergency lights cast long, distorted shadows down a corridor that stretched into darkness. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and something else. A faint, cloying sweetness like overripe fruit. It was the smell of decay, but not of flesh. It was the smell of reality itself having gone slightly off. We moved like phantoms, our mag boots clamping onto the deck with loud, intrusive clicks that echoed in the profound silence. This place wasn't just empty, it was curated. We passed a mess hall where trays of synthetic food sat on tables, untouched. In the crew quarters, personal data pads lay open on bunks, clothes were neatly folded, and a faded hollow picture of a smiling family flickered on a nightstand. There were no signs of a struggle, no panic. It was as if 1,000 people had simply stood up in the middle of their lives and evaporated. The only thing out of place was the writing. On walls, on viewports, on consoles. Someone had scrawled complex geometric patterns and equations. They weren't graffiti. They were elegant, precise, drawn with a steady hand in what looked like coolant fluid. The patterns made my head ache just looking at them, a feedback loop of impossible angles that my brain refused to properly process. Lena plugged her portable console into a wall terminal, her fingers a blur as she sliced through layers of dead firewalls. "I'm in," she whispered, her voice tight. "Main server is weird. Most of the data has been wiped, but not erased. It's been harmonized, reduced to a single, repeating fractal code. It's like they took the entire station's memory and compressed it into one perfect, useless crystal of data." "Can you get anything?" I asked, my hand on the pistol holstered at my hip. I'm trying to reconstruct fragmented files from the cache, she murmured, her eyes distant. Security logs are gone. Crew manifests are gone. But I'm getting bits and pieces of personal logs. Audio only. She routed the first one to our helmet comms. The voice was a woman's. Calm and filled with an almost religious awe. Call it the symphony. Signal Prime is just a component, the primary melody. But once we aligned the deep-range sensors, we could hear the rest, the harmony. It's in the gravitational tides, in the quantum foam, in the decay rate of isotopes. The universe is a song, and we've spent our whole history listening to it with cotton in our ears. We were wrong to think of it as an intelligence. It's not thinking. It is. The log cut out. Another fragment. A man's voice. This one strained. Excited. The patterns on the walls are a gift. Doctor. Thorn was the first to see them. He calls it a new form of mathematics. Not a language to describe the universe, but the language the universe uses to describe itself. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It changes the way your mind processes reality. Some of the junior researchers, they can't handle it. They say it's unmaking them. I say it's remaking us into something that can finally listen. Dr. Thorn. The name hit me like a physical blow. The supervisor from the Karen relay. The man who hummed the lullaby as his world ended. He wasn't a victim. He was a prophet. These people hadn't been attacked. They had opened the door and walked willingly into the void. Lena's face was ashen. They weren't fighting it. Alistair, they were studying it. They were trying to talk to it. Looks like the conversation was a bit one-sided, Jax growled, gesturing with his plasma cutter at the empty corridors. The final audio fragment Lena managed to pull was from Thorn himself. His voice was no longer frantic, but was filled with a terrifying, transcendent calm. We are on the cusp of it. The resonator is almost complete. They call it a weapon, a shield. Fools. It is a tuning fork. The signal is not a predator. It is a catalyst. It doesn't destroy. It elevates. It unbinds the crude matter that holds us and allows the consciousness within to join the symphony. My colleagues on Karen, they were the first choir. Soon, we will be too. We just have to strike the right chord. The log ended with a single, clear, perfectly resonant musical note that made my teeth vibrate. We now knew the station's secret. Airbos wasn't a fortress or a lab. It was a temple, and the scientists had been its first acolytes. We found the resonator in the station's central core, a massive spherical chamber with a zero-gravity environment. The device hung in the exact center, a breathtaking, horrifying piece of art. It was a sphere, perhaps 20 meters in diameter, made of interlocking rings of a crystalline material that seemed to drink the light from our helmet lamps. Wires as thin as spider silk connected it to the walls of the chamber, and at its heart was a perfect, black orb that radiated a palpable cold. The strange, beautiful equations were etched into every surface of the chamber, glowing with a faint, internal luminescence. This was the tuning fork Thorn had spoken of. This was the source of the energy field Lena had detected. It was dormant, but it felt alive. A sleeping god in a cage of its own design. This is what they used, Lena breathed, floating closer to the device. This is how they harmonized themselves. They turned it on, and it tuned them right out of existence. Jax grunted. So, can we use it? Tune that thing out there out of existence? I don't know. Lena admitted, her instruments already scanning the sphere. The physics here, It's not our physics. The power source isn't a reactor, it's a stabilized quantum singularity. The crystals aren't just conduits, they're processing information on a molecular level. It's a machine made of music and math. Thorn was right. It's not a weapon, it's an instrument. A very, very dangerous instrument. As she worked, I felt a familiar chill crawl up my spine. The lullaby. It was back. Faint. Distant. But it was there. A single pure note echoing in the back of my mind. But it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from the stray dog. My blood turned to ice. Sam, I whispered. I spun around, my heart hammering against my ribs. Lena, open a channel to the ship. Now. She tapped a command into her wrist unit. The comm link opened to static, then to the sound of soft, melodic humming. It was Sam. He was singing the lullaby. Sam, can you hear me? What's happening? I yelled, my voice cracking. The humming stopped. A new voice came over the comm, a voice that was and was not Sam's. It was a chorus of voices, layered and ancient, speaking in perfect unison through my little brother's mouth. The witness has seen enough. The aberration will be corrected. On Lena's monitor, a schematic of our ship flashed red. The medbay door had been overridden. Sam was out, and the main fusion drive was spinning up. A massive flare of energy that was, I knew with sickening certainty, the exact dinner bell the Predator had been waiting for. Before we could even react, the chamber we were in changed. The resonator at the center of the room began to glow, the black orb at its core pulsing with a soft violet light. The equations on the walls brightened, and the single note from Thorn's log filled the air. A low, powerful hum that resonated in our chests. The lullaby wasn't just in our heads anymore. It was real, a physical sound wave that vibrated through the station. It's a trap, Lena screamed. The station, the resonator. It's an amplifier. Sam was the trigger. The lullaby didn't just follow us here. It led us. It needed someone psychically attuned to activate the network. The exits to the chamber slammed shut, thick blast doors sealing us inside. Outside, our ship, our only way home, was broadcasting a beacon of pure energy, calling the monster to us, and we were trapped in the very instrument designed to welcome it. The note from the resonator grew louder, deeper, and the whispers returned. 1,000 voices speaking as one, not in our heads, but from the very air around us. They weren't promising peace anymore. They were promising a symphony, and our screams were to be the opening bars, floating in the center of that impossible chamber. I looked at the horrified faces of my crew and understood the truth. We hadn't found a weapon. We had found the altar, and we were the sacrifice. The note from the resonator was no longer a sound. It was a physical law. It pinned us in the 0G of the chamber, a pressure that wasn't gravitational, but existential. My vision swam as the glowing equations on the walls began to crawl, rearranging themselves into new and terrifying geometries that promised to teach my mind a lesson it could not survive. The whispers were a physical hurricane now, scouring our sanity, promising a painless, elegant end if we would only stop fighting and listen to the music. Jax roared in defiance, a primal sound of pure negation, and fired his plasma cutter at the sealed blast door. The bolt of incandescent energy didn't impact. It dissolved a meter from the surface. Its furious energy unraveled and absorbed into the humming air. The door was not a physical barrier anymore. It was a boundary in reality. And we were on the wrong side. It's a standing wave, Lena screamed, her voice strained, her hands clutching her helmet as if to keep her thoughts from spilling out. It's locked the chamber in a stable resonance. We can't break it from the inside. The light from the central sphere pulsed in time with the note. And with every pulse, I felt another piece of myself begin to fray. My memories started to feel distant, like stories I'd read about someone else. The desperate, messy struggle for survival that had defined my life suddenly seemed so unnecessary, so vulgar. There was a cleaner way, a purer state of being, the symphony. "Lena, fight it," I yelled, the words feeling thick and clumsy in my mouth. I had to anchor myself to find something in the chaos. I focused on the feeling of Jax's massive form floating beside me, a bulwark of stubborn reality. I focused on Lena's frantic, brilliant mien, a spark of defiant chaos against this crushing order. The asteroid field. Remember the asteroid field. We fought its song with noise. Do it again. How? She gasped. Her eyes squeezed shut against the crawling mathematics on the walls. "I'm locked out of the resonator systems. I can't touch it." "Don't touch it." "Spoil the acoustics," I shouted, the idea a desperate spark in the encroaching darkness. "This chamber is the instrument. If we can't break the tuning fork, let's smash the damn violin. Overload the station's subsystems, all of them. Give me feedback." Static. Anything but this perfect. Goddamn note hope, fierce and ugly, cut through the fog in Lena's eyes. It was a language she understood. Not elegant physics, but brute force engineering. Vandalism. Her fingers, shaking but sure, flew across the holographic interface on her wrist. "Accessing station mainframe through the local power conduits. It's fighting me. But it's distributed, not focused. I can do this." While she worked, the assault from the resonator intensified. The light from the central sphere solidified, lashing out in crystalline ribbons that were both beautiful and deadly. Jax, roaring, ripped a maintenance panel from the wall and used it as a shield, deflecting the light shards which shattered against it with the sound of breaking glass. He was a force of pure physical defiance, a barbarian kicking down the door of a cathedral. My battle was internal. The entity, the symphony, focused its attention on me, the leader. It didn't show me horrors. It showed me salvation. It laid out a vision of the stray dog, safe and at peace, its crew no longer fighting, no longer suffering, but dissolved into a silent, blissful state of oneness with the cosmos. It showed me Sam, his mind no longer tormented, but serene and whole, a single, perfect note in the grand composition. It accused me, with a voice of crushing reason, of being selfish. My insistence on survival, on individuality, was the source of all their pain. True mercy, it whispered, was letting go. For a second, I faltered. The logic was a siren's song, clean and perfect. But then, through the psychic assault, I felt Jax grunt in pain as a shard of light sliced across his arm. I heard Lena curse as a system fought back against her hack. The sounds were discordant, painful, imperfect. They were the sounds of life. "No," I snarled, not to the voice, but to the universe itself. Pain is the proof. The struggle is the point. You can keep your fucking quiet. I poured all my own messy, chaotic, human rage into a mental wall, a barrier of pure, stubborn refusal. The vision shattered. "I've got it," Lena yelled triumphantly. "Get ready." She slammed a virtual fist down on her console. Hell was unleashed. The gravity plating in the chamber went haywire, slamming us against the ceiling, then the floor, then flinging us sideways in sickening lurches. The emergency lighting began to strobe in a seizure-inducing, arrhythmic pattern. The atmospheric regulators vented jets of freezing nitrogen and hot steam at random, creating a cacophony of hisses and shrieks. Lena was playing the station like a broken instrument, and the result was a symphony of chaos. The resonator's perfect. Resonant note began to waver, to go sour. A discordant shriek tore through the chamber as conflicting frequencies battled for dominance. The crawling equations on the walls flickered and died. The ribbons of light shattered into dust. The standing wave collapsed. With a deafening groan of tortured metal, the blast doors blew outwards, torn from their hinges. We scrambled out, bruised and disoriented, into the relative sanity of the silent corridor. The chamber behind us fell dark and quiet, its divine song broken. We were free, but we were running out of time. The dog. I gasped, staggering to my feet. Sam! The station itself seemed to fight us now. The entity, its elegant trap sprung, had resorted to cruder methods. Corridors that should have been straight now twisted into confusing loops. Doors sealed themselves seconds before we reached them, forcing us to backtrack through the flickering, shadow-haunted maze. Maintenance drones, their optical sensors glowing a malevolent violet, descended from ceiling panels, their manipulator arms repurposed into crude weapons. Jax made short work of them, his plasma cutter carving a path through the swarming machines. But they were slowing us down. The entire station had become the twitching limb of a wounded but still immensely powerful creature. We were no longer in a temple. We were in the belly of the beast. We finally reached the airlock, the umbilical to our ship, a fragile promise of escape. As the inner door cycled open, my heart sank. The humming was louder now, coming from the ship, a sound that was both Sam's voice and the resonator's note, merged into a new, terrifying harmony. The bridge of the stray dog was bathed in the eerie purple glow of the lullaby's energy field. Sam stood at the main viewport, his back to us, his small frame silhouetted against the starfield. He wasn't thrashing or screaming. He was perfectly still, his hands resting on the console, his head tilted as if listening to a distant orchestra. "Sam," I said, my voice gentle, afraid of what I might break. He turned. His eyes were open, but they were not his own. They were deep, placid pools of violet light, filled with an ancient, untroubled wisdom that did not belong on a young man's face. The chorus of voices spoke through him, not with anger, but with a kind of weary disappointment. The dissonant chord insists on its error. Why do you cling to the pain of your form? Why do you resist the harmony? That's not harmony. It's oblivion, I said, taking a slow step forward. Whatever you are, let him go. Your fight is with me. The entity that was Sam smiled, a serene, pitying expression. There is no fight. There is only the composition. He is not a prisoner. He is the first to truly listen. He chose this. He is happy. Behind him, on the main screen, the fusion core's output was spiking into the red, a screaming beacon in the void. And outside, something was coming. Space itself was beginning to curdle, the stars smearing as a patch of shimmering, physics-defying wrongness coalesced just off our port bow. The Predator had answered the call. "I'm going for the core," Lena yelled, already sprinting towards the engine room access corridor. "Jax, with me." They were gone, leaving me to face my brother's ghost. "Sam, listen to me," I pleaded, walking closer until I was only a few feet away. "This thing is lying to you. Peace, happiness. Look at Erebos. Look at Pluto. Is that what you want? An eternity of silence?" The violet light in his eyes wavered slightly. A flicker of the real Sam, of my Sam, surfaced for a heartbeat. Fear. Confusion. "It's so loud. Al," he whispered, his own voice, small and lost. The struggle, always fighting, for scrap, for fuel, for breath. The symphony. "It's quiet there." The chorus voice reasserted itself. Stronger now. "We offer him the peace you never could. He will be a part of something eternal. You offer only noise and decay." It was trying to use my own failures against me, but Sam's moment of fear had given me an opening. "You're right," I said, my voice raw. "I can't offer him peace. Life isn't peaceful, Sam. It's loud. And it's messy. And it hurts. But it's ours." The jokes Jax tells in the galley. The way Lena's face lights up when she solves an impossible problem. The feeling of the dog's controls under your hands when you navigate a perfect burn. That's not noise. That's our song. It's not as grand as yours, but it's real. I was in front of him now, my hand hovering just inches from his shoulder. "Don't let it take that from you. Fight it. Sam, fight for our song." I saw a tear trace a path down his cheek. The violet light in his eyes flickered violently, like a dying star. The chorus voice screamed in my mind, a sound of pure rage and frustration. Then, with a shudder that racked his entire body, Sam's eyes cleared. The light was gone. It was just him. "Al," he choked out, his knees buckling. I caught him as he fell, his body trembling. At the same moment, the ship's engines whined down, the emergency alarms falling silent. Lena had done it. The beacon was off. But it was too late. A shadow fell over the bridge, eclipsing the stars. I looked up, holding my brother. And through the viewport, I saw it. The shimmering, silent, world-eating wrongness was no longer a distant threat. It filled our entire view. It had arrived. It was touching the hull of our ship, and it was looking in. There is no sound when reality ends, no shriek of tearing metal, no explosive decompression. There is only a profound and terrifying subtraction. The shimmering wrongness pressed against the hull of the stray dog, and the ship began to quietly unexist. I watched a section of the viewport simply cease to be, not shattering, but dissolving into a cascade of silent, geometric dust that flowed into the void. The bulkhead behind it followed, peeling away in elegant, impossible layers. The entity wasn't destroying us. It was simplifying us, reducing the complex, chaotic matter of our ship back to its base components of space and silence. A cold, numbing peace began to bleed through the deck plates, a psychic anesthetic promising that this erasure would be painless, even beautiful. It was the lullaby's final verse, the one that sang you into nothing. It's on the move. It's consuming the ship. Lena's voice, sharp with panic, cut through the encroaching calm. At this rate, it'll reach the fusion core in 3 minutes. When it touches that, the resulting energy release will, I don't know what it will do, but it won't be good. Jax had Sam slung over his shoulder and ordered the kid conscious but dazed, the psychic backlash having left him as fragile as glass. Then we leave. Jax boomed, already moving toward the airlock. Back into the station, we can find a maintenance pod, an escape shuttle. There's nowhere to run. Jax, I countered, my mind racing, desperately trying to find a foothold in the landslide. Look, I pointed at the corridor leading back into Erebos. The walls were beginning to shimmer, the same fractal decay starting to creep down the umbilical, flowing from our ship into the station. The entity wasn't just consuming the dog. It was following our trail of dissonance. It was erasing our footprint from the universe. We were cornered on a sinking island, with the ocean itself rising to claim us. We were going to die. The thought was calm, clear, and unacceptable. We had one weapon, one impossible, suicidal, beautiful chance. The resonator, I said, my voice quiet but cutting through the rising panic. We don't run from it. We run to it. Lena stared at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. Alistair, that thing is an amplifier. It's the reason the entity is this strong. It's a welcome mat. Every door swings both ways. Lena. I shot back, a desperate fire kindling in my chest. Thorn used it to broadcast a welcome. We're going to use it to broadcast a declaration of war. We fought its song with noise from our ship. Now we have the biggest goddamn speaker in the system. We're going to give it a concert it will never forget. The madness of the plan was eclipsed only by the certainty of our alternative. Jax grunted, a sound of grim understanding. He shifted Sam's weight. Tell us where to go. Our retreat back into the station was a nightmare flight through a collapsing dream. The entity's influence was spreading. Lights exploded in silent flashes of geometry. Gravity fluctuated, threatening to either crush us or fling us into the decaying walls. The whispers were back, no longer seductive, but a chorus of mocking finality, telling us our struggle was a pathetic, fleeting spasm in the face of inevitable silence. Sam was the key. I knew it. He had been its voice. Now he had to be ours. Sam, can you hear me? I yelled, running beside Jax. Sam's eyes fluttered open. They were his own again, filled with a deep, soul-shaking terror. I can feel it. Al, he whimpered. It's hungry. It wants to make everything quiet. I know, I said, my voice softening. But you heard it. You know its song. That means you can sing a different one. We're going to sing our song. Sam. All of us. Through you. He looked at me, a flicker of his old fire returning to his eyes. He nodded. We reached the core chamber. It was no longer dormant. The central sphere pulsed with a ravenous violet light, feeding on the chaos. And the equations on the walls were alive again, writhing like serpents. I need to get to the core controls, Lena yelled, pointing to a single terminal that was still intact. I have to reverse the polarity of the energy flow, turn it from a receiver into a focused transmitter, Jax. Buy me time. Jax didn't need to be told. He stood before the chamber's entrance, a giant in the flickering gloom, planting his feet as the corridor behind us began to dissolve. He was no longer a man. He was a statement. He was an anchor of stubborn matter in a world that wanted to become a thought. Lena practically flew to the console, her fingers becoming a part of the machine. I helped Sam to the base of the resonator, the hum from the device a physical blow. I don't know what to sing, he stammered, his body trembling. Sing us. Sam, I said. gripping his shoulder, seeing everything. The rust on the dog's hull, the taste of Jax's hydroponic tomatoes, the sound of Lena's cursing when an engine won't turn over. My bad jokes. Your perfect piloting. Sing the fight, the fear, the love. Sing the pain of it. Make it loud. I placed my hand on his back. Jax, seeing us from the doorway, let out a defiant roar. Lena, her face illuminated by the console, spared a glance back at us. A fierce, protective snarl on her lips. A connection formed between us. Not psychic, but something deeper. The unspoken bond of a family forged in desperation and loyalty. Sam closed his eyes, and he began. He didn't sing with his voice. He sang with his mind. He reached out and touched the resonator, and through him, we all did. He poured our shared soul into that terrible machine. It started with the rage, Jax's fury at a universe that had taken everything from him. My own bitter defiance against the void. Then came the sorrow, Lena's grief for a lost Mars. My own ghosts, Sam's terror. But then came the other things. The warmth of the galley after a long haul, the shared laughter over a rerun of an ancient Earth comedy, the quiet satisfaction of a job well done, the silent, profound love we had for one another. It was a cacophony, a symphony of imperfection. It was the frantic, chaotic, heartbreaking, and glorious noise of being human. Lena screamed. Now, she slammed her palm onto the console. The resonator, its energy flow reversed, took our messy, beautiful song and fired it like a cannon shot into the heart of the entity. The violet light in the chamber turned white, then gold, then 1,000 colors that had no names. The station screamed. I felt a pressure in my mind 1,000,000 times greater than the lullaby. But this was our pressure, our noise, our existence, weaponized, outside, the shimmering wrongness convulsed. A being of perfect order, of sublime silence, was being force-fed the chaotic, paradoxical, illogical truth of humanity. It could not process it. It was like dividing by zero. The lullaby shattered into 1,000,000,000 shrieking fragments. The entity, for the first time in its ageless existence, felt something akin to pain. It recoiled, not in a physical sense, but it pulled its presence back from our reality, the way a hand pulls back from a flame. The dissolution of the ship and station stopped, then reversed. The holes in the hull sealed themselves. The light in the chamber died. The whispers, the lullaby, the pressure, all of it was gone. Silence, a true silence, not the pregnant, listening silence of the entity, but the simple, clean, empty silence of the void. We had done it. We had screamed into the abyss. And for the first time ever, the abyss had flinched. We were alive, battered, bruised, and psychically scarred, but alive. Our ship was a patchwork of freshly remade matter, a scar on the face of physics. The station was dead again, but this time, it felt like a tomb, not a temple. In the weeks that followed, we pieced ourselves back together. We salvaged what we could from Erebos, enough to make the stray dog truly spaceworthy again. Sam was changed. He was quiet, but the fear in his eyes was replaced by a deep, calm strength. He had faced a god and taught it his name. We all were changed. We were no longer junkers, running from the system states. We were something else. We were the first and only antibodies in the universe to a disease of cosmic perfection. We had no illusions. The symphony was still out there. We hadn't killed it. We had merely taught it that we were not a melody to be harmonized, but a feedback screech that could break its instruments. It would not be back for us. It now knew the cost. As we finally fired up the dog's main drive and pulled away from the dark, silent tomb of Station Erebos, I looked at my crew, my family, gathered on the bridge. We were heading back toward the squabbling, messy, vibrant worlds of humanity, a civilization that had no idea how close it had come to being silenced. They wouldn't understand our story. To them, we were still just scavengers, ghosts in the system. But we knew the truth. The universe was not empty, and it was not quiet. And from now on, humanity had a purpose. We were the noise. We were the flaw in the music. And we were just getting warmed up